Good evening and salutations, my Days of Our Lives fans. Okay, all right. We're gonna start off with Chanel for a hot minute because she has been just getting on my last nerves, right? In the beginning, she's like very encouraging of Johnny and um, him just going back to work and everything, and all instant to saying that she has his back and everything. She goes to work and she runs into Paulina. And immediately she starts off with the bitchy, bratty attitude. And, Paulina, again, is literally just doing her job as she says she was, right? But she's all like, oh, there's a point where she's like, well, can you do anything to help Johnny out? I'm like, I don't think that you really understand what you're asking. Because let's just sit there and say, for the sake of argument, she does that. What makes you think that Johnny may not come across as looking more guilty than he already is? I mean, my whole thing is like, there's a point where she sits there and she asks you, it's like, so you think that Johnny did it, right? And I'm like, girl, think about this for a hot minute. Let's just sit there and say I was your mother and was a total stranger. This guy literally was pissed that what EJ did to his mother. Anybody would be. Then he's running around town practically saying that, he got exactly what he deserved and this, that, and the third. And he also did point a gun at EJ. So while she's sitting there saying, well, listen, it's your actions, you didn't do it, you're not upset. Again, you're not upset with him for pulling a gun out on his own dad, but you're upset with your mom for literally doing her job. You want to make that make sense? Now, what I am happy about is that there's a point when she does sit there and say, listen, I do feel that you are just doing what you feel is right. And I'm like, I don't like part of me was just like, okay, I'm glad that we got to that point where you're not just acting ungrateful and being all nasty towards your mother because again, this is not the first time that she's came at her own mother like that. And honestly, to tell you the truth, I was like, Mom Dukes needs to start seeing that they're being a little more tough on her. And so just constantly taking the abuse that she keeps getting from her own goddamn daughter. I'm like, she already got abuse from one person, which forced her to, gain wealth and everything like that to make sure that she got to be the trust fund baby that we're seeing now. No, 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 no. Like part of me was like, I felt like she should have been a little bit more tougher. Um, Belle and Jada does call her down to the station because, they're okay. So they do call her down to the station, but before she gets there, there is one point where they're talking about they're waiting to sit there and see the video and the video and everything. And Belle's like, listen, I don't think that that's actually going to do anything. And Jada's like, why? And long story short, Belle's like, because EJ he took out the memory card before he got shot. And she's like, don't you think you should have told me that earlier? And, Belle was like, well, at the time it just seemed irrelevant. I was like, how did it seem irrelevant? From her point of view, she's sitting there waiting until she gets that tape, until she gets that video to sit there and see if he's on there or not. And you're telling her well after that, oh yeah, I already knew that, they're not going to sit there and show who shot him because he took out the memory card before. And you're sitting there saying that's irrelevant? Like, part of me was just like, okay, this doesn't really make a lot of sense. Anyway, long story short, I'm about to sit there and say Jackie Harris. They call Paulina down there. They'll watch the video. And the video shows Chanel confronting AJ and threatening him. Isn't there saying that I'm gonna end you or something like that? And so now Pauline is all nervous and everything. And I'm like, all it means is that she's a suspect. Now I knew at first I was sitting there thinking, maybe Chanel shot him, right? Maybe Chanel shot him. And seeing the confrontation that she had with EJ today, yeah, it's totally possible. But at the same time, it doesn't, I'm like, Paulina, part of me is like kind of relax. I don't want to sit there and say relax, but it doesn't show that she's the one that shot him. It just shows that she threatened him. Johnny also threatened him. And I'm pretty sure if you find somebody else, you question somebody else, you talk to Gabby, Gabby threatened him too. So, you know, the thing was, what Bell did sit there and say is like, listen, it may not show the shooter, but it's going to show up until that point. It's going to show the events that happened up until that point. Okay, so let's talk about these two for a minute. So it turns out that Xander didn't wind up sleeping with Gwen. He wound up just leaving when they started making out and stuff, and he just left because she woke up by herself. And I'm like, so what happened? He hit it or whatever, that he just dipped out or whatever. But turned out he didn't even do that. He just, hooked up or whatever, kissed, but that was about it though. So JJ comes to the room and he just pretty much barges on in. He finds necklace and he's like, okay, well, listen, this is Julie's what? This is Julie's necklace, and I'm gonna sit there and leave. And this is stolen property. And listen, Gwen may not be exactly my favorite character, but he practically tried to beat her over the head like she didn't know the law. So she was, he was like, well, listen, we saw it, the family saw it when they opened the time capsule and everything. And he's literally trying to just walk on out with her necklace. And she's like, no, you're not going anywhere with that. And the thing is, she knew the law. Okay, she knew the law. You wasn't, you know what I'm saying? Like, and I'm not gonna sit there and say all cops do this because that's clearly not the case. But you do have to be aware of the laws in your country. Because if you don't, if you have a cop that is just an asshole, they could pretty much just do what he just did. And she was like, no, there's no proof that it's actually hers. There's no bill of sale or anything like that, or receipts or anything like that. So, like, as far as, the law is concerned, there's no proof that it's actually hers. And she snatches it right back. And on some level, it's like I get it. That's his grandmother right there, and he wants to then do right by her. He knows that most likely that the necklace is stolen and stuff, and that is the family's necklace, but he can't prove it. And in a sense, he kind of put his job on the line to sit there and do that. But JJ's like, listen, you're doing this to get revenge. You're doing this to sit there and torture her, to torture the family, whatever. And of course, Gwen started off with the sob story. Listen, here's my thing. I'm not saying that there's like her upbringing, her childhood was rough, and that's nothing that no child should have to endure, right? But see, my thing is that she's sitting there blaming Jack. Sitting there saying, "Well, Jack didn't have enough love for me, and Jack, I didn't grow with my father, and y'all did, and that's not fair." And then by the time I was in his life, he didn't have enough. He didn't have enough love for me because he already had a daughter. And I'm like, girl, seriously? Listen, I get that energy when you were growing up. You are a grown ass woman. Like, seriously. And so JJ says like probably like the realest sentence that I've heard, you know, in weeks. The last time I heard a sentence that real was Sally talking to Billy about, listen, if this whole company goes under or it goes bust, I'm not going to be able to put food on the table. And so JJ's like, suck it up. Or he didn't sit, no, I don't exactly remember what he said, but he was like, get over it. That's what he said. He was like, get over it. Because, listen, girl, you're rich. Yeah, it sucked that you grew up, with less love and everything like that than most children and stuff, and that's unfortunate. But a lot of people have bad childhoods, you know? And it doesn't make them necessarily grow up to sit there and act out the way that you do. Like it's ridiculous. And like you said, you're sitting there jealous over a dead woman. What you're trying to you're jealous of it just the way he broke it down was just like really good. But it was like, what are you doing? You know what I'm saying? Like Jack has a lot of room in his heart. How actually a lot more room in his heart because he lost his daughter. And he's like, but the way you've been acting, if you want to sit there and try to replay that relationship, you're gonna have to make the first move. And so, at that point he just walks out and she's upset, I guess she's crying. But the thing is, she's not really sitting there saying a lot back. Hell, she did sit there and ask him, like, how would I go about reaching out to him? I think that was, I don't want her to turn into this one note. Oh, it's Abigail's fault. My dad didn't love me. My dad didn't want me. And I'm like, girl, think about the last interaction. That's another thing. Think about the last interaction that you had with your dad when you literally blackmailed him into getting the paper from him. But you want to sit there and talk about, oh, well, my dad didn't love me growing up and he wasn't there for me and da 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 da. Girl, it's your shitty actions that has put you in this position. You have all this money, like you say, you have looks and everything like that, and yet you're not happy. You're not happy because, like JJ said, family is what you're missing. But you've done this to yourself. So it's very hard for me to sit there and have sympathy towards her. Um, EJ and Tony are pretty much kind of talking shop. There's a point when Tony's like, and this is what I don't understand. So Tony's like, listen, we need to sit there and get back to Demera Company. And EJ's like, for what, really? Because, like, I'm busy running a hospital. We can't get in contact with Stefan. Kristen, her last go around was, crash and burn. Chad is not there running the newspaper. You don't want to sit there and handle the daily operations. So, like, it's one of those things where it's like, bro, what do you want? You know what I'm saying? Like, what do you want to do with it? Now, EJ was like, oh, we could sit there and get Johnny. I'm like, all right, bro. Come on. Johnny does not have experience in the corporate world. And EJ's like, oh, we could sit there, we can guide him. Bro, he's also sitting there facing a number of charges that could be going on for weeks. Like, part of me was just like, what was even the point of bringing that up? Um, and during this whole conversation about what Rita's doing and stuff, I think there's a point when Tony's like, are you going to sit there and just make up evidence? Like, is that what you're going to sit there and do? Um, Belle does sit there and tell AJ to come down to the station because, they got the video footage. And I guess it makes sense because I guess the opposing side or whatever has to sit there and be able to review the evidence or whatever. Because at first I was like, why are you, why are you calling them for? Let's see. One picture. Huh, I just like this picture. Anyway, Johnny does get to the office. Now, Xander and Philip are still not getting along. And, Johnny gets to the office. And there's a point where Philip is like, listen, we're going to have to sit there and make some sort of statement. Like, I exactly remember who suggested it, but it was somebody in office that suggested like, we got to do something to please the shareholders and stuff because when Xander went to, when he got arrested, the stocks plummet. And so they need to sit there and make a video or whatever just to kind of show that, you know, everything is copacetic between the brothers and stuff like that. And Johnny, Xander didn't want to do it at first, and Johnny was like, "Yeah, no, that's a good idea." And granted, he's not corporate, but he does come from entertainment, and so he does sit there and talk about like a well-crafted apology could sit there and make all the difference in the world. So he backs Philip on that. There's a couple of comedy scenes that is kind of funny. I normally don't do the whole comedy thing, but Philip is just being a brat at this point. He's doing everything he can to sit there and annoy Xander, and I'm kind of just like, bro, you barely survived that last ass whooping. Do you really want to sit there and push this man? Like, is that really what you want to sit there and do? And he has the hangover from hell. Um, and then having Philip act like a brat just did not help. But to be fair, you did nearly beat a man to like you did beat a man nearly to death. So if you gotta have a hangover and have to sit there and deal with Philip's shenanigans, oh effing well. Anyway, I think for the most part that's pretty much about it. I mean Johnny, like I said, Johnny and Chanel did talk afterwards or whatever, but um it was nothing really to sit there and like talk about. Anything that I missed, write it in the comment section or just come to the live stream. We'll sit there and talk about it as well there. Um, yeah, share this video because it really does help. With that being said, I'm gonna go. I'll see you in the next video.